Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome to another Mortal Kombat video. Now, seeing as last week you guys really did enjoy my retcon video regarding Sindel, I figured I'd somewhat continue the trend by talking about other characters that have been put in Mortal Kombat 11 that have had some tweaks and alterations to their background that do heavily deviate away from what they originally were. So in today's retcon, alteration and changes episode, I'll be talking about none other than the female Crimson Ninja of the series, Skarlet. Now, although Skarlet herself made her debut in MK9, she was a rumored character that was said to have existed all the way back in the original arcade day, because for those of you who don't know, Ermac was believed to be an in-game error that would turn Scorpion red. However, this proved to be just a rumor and something fabricated amongst the community. However, NRS Midway at the time knew about this rumor and decided to have it come to fruition, eventually leading to the actual creation of Ermac. Now, a similar idea would be applied in MK2, this time with apparently Kitana turning red, leading up to the nickname of Skarlet. It was only up until the universe was rebooted in MK9 where this character was finally introduced to us via DLC. Now, she does make a few appearances here and there in the MK9 story mode, but doesn't actually play any significant role, and it's only up until we got official trailers where we actually learn about who she is as a character and how she came to exist. You see, Shao Kahn wanted the ultimate warrior, one that would embody his bloodlust as well as his incredible power, and that's where he came up with the idea of creating a being completely composed of blood. So with his talent in the dark arts, Shao Kahn would use blood magic and create an entire being composed of his enemy's blood, and this would of course be Skarlet. Now, despite herself seeing Shao Kahn as her master and father, Skarlet's insatiable bloodlust was very dangerous, as she could go on full rampages, killing anyone in her way and absorb their blood to increase her own power. So Skarlet was an extremely powerful individual if you were to set her off on a suicide mission, as the more individuals she killed, the stronger she would become. But because of her insatiable bursts of bloodlust, she would be confined to chains, as she could easily turn on any of her allies and even kill Shao Kahn himself if she were able to absorb the blood of enough individuals. Now, despite being chained up, she was not at all seen as a failure in Shao Kahn's eyes. She was a reliable ally and asset, but if it was one that he couldn't control, then he would only use her as a last resort. So originally, Skarlet is a child of Shao Kahn and can be seen as a sibling amongst Ermac and Mileena, as Ermac was forged and constructed by Shao Kahn's control of dark magic, and Mileena was created in Shang Tsung's flesh pits under the orders from Shao Kahn, as he desired a true daughter that would embody the bloodlust and rage of a Tarkatan with the strengths and endurance of an Edenian. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because these ideas in fact do cross over into the MKX comic book run. You see, although Skarlet doesn't play an actual role in MK9 outside of just being DLC, in the comic book run, she is an ally of Reiko working alongside Havoc, as the pair are assembling Kamidogu daggers that in this timeline have blood magic like properties. So anyone cut by these daggers would have their powers elevated to that of a god. So with that being said, and Skarlet having an insatiable bloodlust, she believed that by joining their side, it may cure her hunger whilst also granting her incredible power beyond what she already has. Now, because of her allegiance to Reiko, it does bring her into conflict with Mileena, as Reiko betrayed her earlier in the comic book run, and when she's battling her quote-unquote sister, Ermac does intervene, and it's referenced to a lot during this interaction that they do refer to each other like brother and sister. So the continuity and idea of Skarlet's creation does in fact carry across from MK9. It's only up until 11 where the character does change and there has been some alterations to her background. Now, just to somewhat cap off the comic book run, by the end of the fight, Skarlet is incapacitated as she does lose both her legs, and this is in fact the last time we see this version of Skarlet in the main continuity, as the one we come across in 11 is the MK9 iteration of the character. Now, with that being said, let's talk about Mortal Kombat 11 Skarlet and how she deviates away from her original backstory. Now, in this seeming alteration and change of the character, we learn that Skarlet's entire backstory has somewhat been retconned, as she is no longer a being created by Shao Kahn, but instead an outworld orphan that was left on the streets that was taken in by the Emperor, From this point onwards, he raised her and taught her the ancient form of outworld magic, blood magic, hence why in MK11 she is referenced to by many individuals as the somewhat Blood Witch. But I definitely believe it's worth mentioning here about the alterations to her background. Now, one of the most notable changes about this retcon is actually what has happened to her voice. You see, when she was incorporated to MK9, there were multiple and different pitches to her voice, and the reason for that is because she was composed of different individuals that made her up. So when she spoke, there were different pitches to her voice, whereas in 11 she does just have the one. But here's the thing where it does get slightly confusing. Despite the alteration and change to her background in Mortal Kombat 11, Ed Boon does in fact still refer to her as a creation of Shao Kahn. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that means for the character. Maybe the older version of Scarlet that lost her legs was the version created by Shao Kahn from Blood, and maybe the one we do see in MK11 is a completely different individual that goes under the same name. So both continuities can in fact work together. However, this in itself is just a theory with no actual supporting foundation, and two different arguments that just kind of collide with each other. So whilst I believe this is an interesting idea to put out there, that should be as far as it does go. Now, it's also at least worth mentioning here, but I would consider Scarlet's somewhat origin change a bit of a nerf to her character. You see, with at least the MK9 iteration of the character, as I've strongly emphasized, from a lore perspective, she gets stronger the longer she's drenched in blood. This allows her to absorb her enemy's power and become stronger over the course of time. However, with the change that she does have now, instead of being a being made up of blood, she's simply a practitioner of it and a somewhat connoisseur. However, I do feel like that is as far as it does go, and the 11 iteration of Scarlet is never really given the opportunity to show off the extent of her power. The most we actually only do see of it is during Kitana's chapter, where she is draining Jade of her blood, but even then it's a very small scene, and if not so a smidge of what the MK9 iteration of the character had at her fingertips. It's hard to honestly describe, as both characters are extremely vague in that respect, but it just feels like the original backstory was far more interesting than her 11 counterpart, as honestly it seems like Scarlet was far more of a monster back then than she is now. Now, I will say with her being a DLC character, it doesn't necessarily make her origin story something set in stone, but it is our first impressions of the character, and you are technically putting the character on a pedestal to be inserted into the universe. So for it to somewhat be altered and retconned in MK11, it's definitely a change I don't personally agree with, as Scarlet herself doesn't actually play a main big role in 11's story. She unfortunately is for the most part a lackey slash jobber, and she serves her role well in the story mode, as she is usually the best part of any scene she's in. It's just a weird and random change to her character, but otherwise does feel kind of unnecessary. But this does for the most part cover all the alterations and changes Scarlet has undergone in Mortal Kombat 11. I hope you've come away learning a little bit more about what exactly has gone on with her since her debut in MK9, because there's been some very weird changes to her story. Now, in terms of retcons, I do have one more in mind, but if you are aware of any other retcons in the Mortal Kombat universe that affect or change characters to a drastic level, please post them down in the comments below, as who knows, this may become a regular thing on the channel if there is of course enough to talk about. But until then, that will be it for this video. So if possible, let's try getting it to about 500 likes, as it's a great way of supporting the channel. And also don't forget to tick that bell and subscribe, as it's honestly the best way of keeping up to date with the channel. Now, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.